So I'm just adjusting the turnbuckle on this high tensile airplane cable. It's one of the main ways that oh look, there's a bird in the greenhouse. Looks good to see. That's good integrated pest management. This airplane cable is our primary trellising mechanism for our tomatoes. And so this is how commercial growers actually maximize vertical space in a greenhouse. Greenhouses are expensive spaces to build and manage, and so you really want to maximize the amount of productivity that you get out of every cubic foot of greenhouse that you've paid to enclose. And so this is a little technique that Carmen, who's one of our teachers in the permaculture design course, gave us, because she used to grow tomatoes commercially. And these are little fancy wire hooks that don't cost very much money, and they allow you to have some extra string attached to it, and then you just literally wrap the string around the tomato. A tomato, especially the indeterminate kind, there's two types of tomatoes. There's determinate and indeterminate. Determinate are basically bush tomatoes. They have a determined maximum height that they're going to get to. An indeterminate tomato, though, can grow 20, 30 feet tall, depending on the conditions and the duration of time that they're growing. And so we have a cable up here at probably 8 or 9 feet. And so I don't have a lot of vertical space for this tomato. I mean, I could go right to the roof, but then it gets really hard to manage. And so the way that you allow a tomato plant to get really tall is with these little hooks. And so as this climbs the rope or the string, you've got extra string on here, and you can unwind it and let the tomato down. Now, tomatoes typically only fruit on the top part of their vine. So once they've fruited on the bottom, then they're constantly moving their flowers. Here's the next set of flowers right here, where they're going to produce the next set of tomatoes. And so if you actually look at the tomato bed here, all the tomatoes are actually leaning over, and they've got probably 3 or 4 feet of vine that are just laying horizontally on the bed before they start to take a right angle turn and go towards the roof. So that's why they're all kind of look like they're leaning over to the side, is because they actually are. And that's so that we can get a maximum amount of vertical space or vine for them to continue to produce tomatoes. So that's one of the ways that we maximize vertical space, is through trellising. Another trellising technique that we employed this year, and it's not quite done. I want to put another cable up top to support it. You can see it's not very stable right now. But this is just, I call it Rio. I'm not sure if that's what other people refer to it as, but it's basically a narrow gauge concrete reinforcing mesh. You can buy it at any hardware store. So we bought this, I think, in a 110-foot roll. And then we measured out the distance in order to make this tunnel, so to speak. And so this tunnel basically creates a vertical surface for these cucumbers and this watermelon plant to grow upwards. And so again, we could just let this go on the ground, but because we've given it this vertical surface, now we can get the leaves get access to more sun because they're spread out a little bit more, and we are able to grow more in a really small space. So this is a really neat little simple technique to get more vertical space in the greenhouse. One of the other things that this has less to do with using vertical space, but we're always trying to make sure that we're being good stewards of our soil. And so we actually built some small raised beds, and all this does is basically contain the soil in our growing beds. And this is an example of a path that's not done yet. We've dug this out. We basically dug this soil out to fill the beds, and we're just about, we're probably going to get another wood chipper here soon. And we make these really nice paths with wood chips. And so we walk on our wood chips, which means that we're not walking on our garden beds. And that's a really great way to reduce weed pressure, reduce compaction, and increase productivity, because soil doesn't like to be stepped on. And so we use a lot of these raised beds inside of our greenhouse. We've got one for the cucumbers and watermelons. We've got another one here for our tomatoes. And these raised beds aren't going to last forever. We might get 5 or 10 years out of it before the wood rots out, at which point we'll just rebuild it, and it's not a big deal. And then what's really nice about having this path system is we can actually run all of our drip irrigation lines underneath the paths as well. It's really easy to run that. And so there are 1/2-inch thin wall poly lines going to each of these beds, and then each of these plants has an individual dripper going to it. And eventually, we don't have it quite automated yet, but that whole system will be automated, probably with soil sensors, so that we can automatically water our plants on a regular basis. So if we want to leave for a couple of days, we don't have to worry about our greenhouse dying. We will also have, watering is one of the big issues in a greenhouse. And if you overwater, you create problems. And if you underwater, you create problems. And so you really do have to engage with your greenhouse. The automatic stuff is great, but you need to still come out here on a regular basis and for feedback, basically, to see if you're over or under watering. We will also have kind of hand watering stations as well, which will allow us to top up things if they're not getting enough water for drip, or we may choose to shut one of the zones off and hand water if we feel we can do a better job doing it by hand. So there's literally an endless number of management techniques that we can talk about in another video. But this is one of those management techniques, the vertical space and the automatic watering, that allows us to have really healthy plants in here on a regular basis.